Welcome to At Your Library. I'm Clayton Cheever, Assistant Director at the Thomas Crane Public Library. Please join me for a look at some of the free events our library is offering this May. While our buildings are closed during this coronavirus pandemic, we are still working hard to inspire curiosity, spark imagination, and foster community, and connect people to the online world. Now, more than ever, is a good time to become familiar with what we have available on our website, thomascranelibrary.org. In this program, I'll talk about what we have available online right now and some programs coming up that I think you'll be interested in. As we continue to develop new programs and services, we'll update this program, so please continue to tune in to stay up to date with everything we have going on. We've been doing a lot of work on our website, and more is still being planned. I'm going to guide you through a few of our recent additions. From our homepage and many other pages, I'm going to go ahead and share right now so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So from our homepage and many other pages, you can now easily open up a chat session and talk with a librarian. So you can see that here we are on our homepage, thomascranelibrary.org, and at the bottom right, when we are staffing it, you'll see this questions, chat with a librarian option. And when you click on that, it will bring up a little chat box where you can type in your question saying hello right here. There's actually somebody live there right now, so I'm not going to go ahead and click through. We'll let them answer questions from other people, but that's how that works. And it's super simple. Your text will show up here, and it's a really easy way to talk with our staff. I'm also, let's see. You can also call and talk with someone during the same hours we're staffing our chat service. Our phone number while our buildings are closed is 617-376-1102. We're currently staffing phone and chat service Monday to Thursday from 10 to noon and later from 5 to 7. And on Fridays, we're staffing phone and chat from 10 to noon and later from 2 to 4 in the afternoon. One of the other ways you can get in touch with us is if you go straight to our chat page at thomascranelibrary.org/chat. And when you go there, you'll see something very similar to this. And the hours that I just mentioned are down here below, also on that page. So if you get the hours that you can reach out and talk to us right now, you can find it right there, as well as links so that you can send a communication to us after hours. You can also always call that phone number, 617-376-1102, at any time and leave us a message if it's outside those hours, and we'll get back to you as soon as we're available. When you reach out to us, we can help you get answers to your questions. We can provide personal recommendations on what to read, watch, and listen to next. We can help you get a library card from home. We call these e-cards. We can also help you reset the PIN on your account, navigate our digital content to find stuff that interests you, and help you connect with local Quincy area resources, and connect you with people who can even help you with your taxes. And remember, the deadline for filing taxes this year has been pushed back to July 15th. But if you're going to be getting money back, I strongly encourage you to file as soon as possible so you can get that money into your account. We've gathered all the resources that you may find useful, that we think that you'll find useful from home onto our webpage, and we've gathered these resources into a couple of web pages just to make them easier for you to find them. If you go to our website, you can see them here in the library news block, where it tells us information about how our libraries are closed, but our buildings are closed, but we are still open. It also mentions how late fees are suspended, all holds are suspended. We encourage you to keep anything that you have currently checked out, keep them at home. When we reopen, there's going to be plenty of time for you to return things, so don't worry about it. And come out and see these collections that we've put together for you to do from home right here. You can go to the TCPL at Home link, which is this one right here that I already have open, where we have a whole long list of things that you can do. Including a link to the Ask a Librarian page, information about our audio books, ebooks, magazines, movies, television shows, music, newspapers. You probably need me to read the screen to you, but there's lots of information on this page, which is TCPL at Home. You can also see we have some links here to some of our favorite new things. We've got a link here to Medici TV, which has given us a free trial, so you can go explore that. If you'd like to hear Betty White read to you Harry the Dirty Dog, there's some other great stuff out there from lots of folks that I mentioned here, like James Earl Jones. I saw a Sarah Silverman reading on Storytime Online. It's all stuff put together by the Screen Actors Guild Foundation, so it's really wonderful reading. There's also information about here about the Tumble books, which is something we're considering purchasing access to. We have free access through the end of August, and so I encourage you to go and check out all the Tumble books and see what that resource is all about. Those are especially interesting to folks who have children and families. So if you have kids in your family that you're home with, I encourage you to also check out the TCPL at Home for Kids page. You can see this simply also from our website. There's a link to check out TCP Home for Kids. You can also go over here. You'll see different icons here on our homepage. And again, this is at thomascranelibrary.org. Depending upon when you arrive, you'll see either this image, you could see this image, which is encouraging you to come and talk to us, or you may see this one about e-cards. But over here on the We're Still Open Online, you can see check out TCP Home for Kids, which is this right here, that Amanda has especially been curating with lots of resources for people that are home with younger people in their house as well. Another resource online that I want to draw your attention to is our frequently asked questions page. If you go to About, there's the How Do I option, but you can also find FAQs, or frequently asked questions. So if you have something that you'd like to know about, let's say when the library is going to reopen, if we're doing curbside service, which we're not, information about our Wi-Fi, there's a lot of information on this page that will likely answer your question. So I encourage you to check this out and see if you can get your questions answered there. We're always happy to talk to you, but we like to put information in the most easily accessible form. So go ahead and check that out. Since this pandemic started, we have really increased the number of videos that we're producing. So we've created a brand new YouTube channel as well to feature all of our new content. Now, the best way to find this channel right now is either by going to our webpage and finding the link from the At Your Library page. From the Connect menu, you can click At Your Library, and that will bring you to this page where you can find links to our Facebook, Instagram, all our various social platforms, including our YouTube page. Or you can simply go to YouTube and search for, I had this one already open, and search for Thomas Crane Public Library. You'll know you're there when you see our Crane logo, just like you're seeing here, and you'll see recent uploads. Now, as you're navigating our channel on Thomas Crane Library, you'll see videos, you'll see playlists, you'll see channels. You can see right now, this is my account, and you can see I'm already subscribed. I hope that you will subscribe as well, because as soon as we get 100 subscribers, we can change this long, ugly URL to something that fits Thomas Crane Library. And we're almost there. As of right now, we only needed 12 more the last time we refreshed this page. So please go out, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and enjoy all the content that we're putting out there. As you'll see, our children's librarians have been hard at work. We have Amanda in some work on the Rock Cycle here. We have Sam talking about various programs and crafts that you can do from home. We also have Carrie and Eileen talking about Libby, which is an app from Overdrive, and so some tips about how to use that app and some great things that you can find out there on Libby. So, if you're a member of Facebook, we've also recently created a special page for children and their families. If you go to our Facebook page, I encourage you to check out. And on our page, this is what our page looks like. You're seeing this as an admin for me right now. And you can also go and look for the Thomas Crane, the children's room at the Thomas Crane Library. Again, the easiest way to find our Facebook pages is, again, at that Connect At Your Library. The children's page is special because our children's librarians, as you saw on our YouTube page, are creating a lot of videos and other online content that will be primarily featured now on the Children's Room Facebook page. I encourage you to go out and like it today, especially if this is information you want to make sure you regularly see. Now I want to tell you about some great programs we're hosting this month. Every Wednesday through May 20th, we're hosting a guided listening program with Dr. Delvin Case. Here is the next one. I'm showing you our calendar right here. We started with an exploration of the top music from 1970 and what makes it still great today, 50 years later. We followed that up with a program dedicated to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and the next week we talked about great singer-songwriters, including Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Tracy Chapman, and others. At the end of every session, we're conducting a poll to figure out what we're going to talk about next. We're conducting these programs on Zoom and live streaming them on our YouTube page. I hope you'll join us live on Wednesdays at 7. We are recording these and we'll be rebroadcasting them on QATV, but because of the copyright protection algorithms on YouTube, we can't share those recordings on YouTube. They just simply get blocked, even though it's totally fine with copyright, within the bounds of copyright to use them for educational purposes. We can't make that argument when they're sitting out there and dealing with the algorithms that YouTube deploys. May 5th, we have a great program that we're hosting at 7 o'clock. It's online, also being conducted on Zoom and live streamed to YouTube. It's with historian Sean Murphy, and it's all about Brexit and its likely impact on Ireland. I recently got to speak with Sean and learn more about what he'll be talking about. I hope you enjoy our conversation. I'm talking with Sean Murphy, a historian and fabulous gentleman who is going to share with us information about his knowledge of Irish history and world history, and how the current time is impacting relationships between Great Britain, England, and Ireland, the implications of Brexit on that relationship, and we can't ignore what's happening today with coronavirus and the pandemic we're living through. Hope you'll join us on Tuesday, May 5th, starting at 7 o'clock. I think it's going to be a fabulous recording. You can join us via Zoom. The link is on our calendar website, accessible from our website. And you can also just join us on our YouTube channel. Look for Thomas Crane Library in YouTube and look for the Crane. And you can also find a link from our website. Sean, thank you so much for joining me today. It's really a pleasure to have you talk to me, and I'm really looking forward to our program together.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to doing it.
Yeah. When we originally started talking about doing this program, it was a very different world, it feels like. And certain things have really changed, but some things have still remained. We still have Brexit is happening and is going to have a major impact on a lot of lives. And I know that you have an incredible wealth of knowledge about the history of the UK, and especially the history of Ireland. We're going to do a future program which we'll talk about and share with folks about that history of Ireland and Ireland 101. But at this program that we're talking about today, you're going to be talking about the impact of Brexit on Ireland.
Sure, and right now, as you say, it's a time when everything is up in the air. But again, unfortunately, because the outcome of Brexit has severe implications for Ireland, but in Britain it's almost like there's nothing happening. They're saying that the initial deadline, which was a very difficult deadline to meet, and under the circumstances that you have now, you wouldn't expect anyone to be even trying to keep that deadline. They're still insisting they would keep that deadline for political reasons. They're just ignoring the reality. And part of the reality was when the initial meetings on Brexit got set up, the two main negotiators on both sides were tested and both found to be positive. So the talks couldn't go ahead. Then for the last 6 weeks, Boris Johnson, who was in total denial that there was a problem, ended up getting the virus, and now he's so thankful to the nurses and doctors for saving his life. You'd think the world had changed. But still, in England, they want to proceed as if everything was normal. And that's going to be difficult. And what I'm saying there is that there was a deadline set up for the summer. I think it's the end of June. If they want to have an extension for 2 years, to kind of work on the detail of the exit, they have to apply for it by then. Now, granted, Europe may be in a situation to say, well, given the circumstances, we would give you an extension. Because remember, in the run-up to Brexit, Britain had to apply for 3 extensions to the initial deadline because they couldn't get their government to work out and agree on anything. So that's still a possibility. But the reality is, Britain do not want to be the ones to ask. So it may be up to Europe, to bring that in.
Sean, this is Without going to much further into it, because I know there's a lot of context and we're going to spend a lot of time during the program, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how you first became interested in this subject. I assume most people will recognize with your last name and with your accent that you may have a personal connection to it. And I would love to hear a little bit about the personal side, because that's probably not something we'll talk about much actually during the program. We're focusing on the current situation and the history.
Sure. Well, the history of Ireland is such that Ireland has been dominated by England for centuries. Beginning in the 12th century, but particularly from the 17th century, and it was England because Great Britain didn't arise until the early 18th century, and the UK, as we know today, didn't really begin until 1800. So over time, Ireland was made dependent upon Britain. Ireland was developed as a colonial garden, essentially, so that the cities in England could be fed with food from Ireland. Also, native manufacture in Ireland, which had been going on way back, was destroyed because Britain did not want, or England did not want, Irish produce competing with it in the colonies. And because they controlled Ireland, they simply brought in a law that says, okay, you can make your goods, but you're not going to be allowed to sell it to anybody other than us. So we'll buy it, and then we'll bring it to the colonies, and we'll mark it up to whatever we want. But the main thing then was that they were able to guarantee that their monopoly prices in the colonies would be maintained. The effect of that then was they offered prices that were so low to goods produced in Ireland that they effectively destroyed any industry from growing, and it was a disincentive to anybody to get involved. Then, of course, after a while, then the British began to say, "Oh, you Irish, you don't do nothing. You are not entrepreneurs. You're not business people. You don't create jobs." And the result of that, of course, was because there was no markets available. And on top of that, then you've had other issues to do with religion, whereby, Irish people could not live as ordinary people in an ordinary society. So it became increasingly difficult. Now, in the last 100 years after Irish independence, the issue was, to break down that historic dependency on Britain, because Britain was Ireland's main exporter. And that meant that we were literally, in danger at any time that Britain could impose tariffs or could carry out any kind of an economic warfare that it wished. And it did that at various times. So it was in Ireland's interest to break that link. After World War II, when Europe and people in Europe decided we need to put an end to this historic spiral of European countries invading and fighting and killing their populations, that we need to put together a project that would reduce that. For Ireland, that meant that we could then be able to link up with other partners and break down the historic dependency upon Britain. And that was one of the major attractions, in Ireland. At the same time, in Ireland, there was a fear as well that you were just substituting one master for another. So there would have been, a substantial number of people in Ireland worried about literally the sovereignty, issue. But still, for practical reasons, there needed to be an expansion of the markets, so that we weren't so dependent upon Britain, and that we could essentially scatter the risk or spread the risk out. And that was the attraction. For England really was only in it, to get whatever it could. England was never really committed to the European project. The European project, I suppose, made more sense for countries that had land borders within Europe, where invasion was a lot easier than crossing the sea. But still, England could have benefited and should benefit and should see the benefit in organizing a Europe whereby you lessen the hostilities and you make just ordinary living more possible. And that's what the project was about, creating a single currency, getting rid of customs borders, allowing the free movement of labor. Those were all valuable issues, and would have created a Europe that's a bit like the United States. Can you imagine if you were a Texan and you were told you can't come to Massachusetts?
Right.
Or if you're from Tennessee and you were told, you can't come to California. So if you think about it in those terms, you can see why it makes sense to have a European project. the bonus for everybody would be a reduction in the war, and of course, at this stage, with the rise of with Russia and the takeover by Russia of literally half of Europe, it was necessary for the rest of Europe to be able to combine in a way that they could mount an effective defense should the Russians decide to, one morning wake up and send a couple of million of their soldiers heading, across the rest of Europe. So at one level, that's the issue. Unfortunately for Britain, it was always about the money. They were interested in Europe when they could make money out of it. Initially, they were opposed to it because they traded more with their old colonial, and when the issue of joining the European Union came up, it meant that Britain would have to essentially lose out on some of the benefits that it was gaining from trading with the Commonwealth countries, and it didn't want to lose that benefit. Over time, it became obvious that the benefits from being in Europe would at some point outweigh the benefits, that they had historically. So then they began to think, well, medium to long term, it does make sense. Then when Europe moved on towards a social and a political and constitutional, entity, Britain started to withdraw from that. And the basis of the Brexit movement originated from the opposition to a social and political project. Once it was just economic, they were happy, but they didn't want to commit themselves to the laws of Europe, to a social project. And some of that had to do, with the politics in Europe, between left and right, or between the centre and the left and the centre and the right. There's all sorts of combinations there. So from the 1980s, the opposition to the European project began, and some of it was based upon some reasonable opposition. I mean, Margaret Thatcher got involved in Europe because in Europe the way it works is each country contributes to a central fund, and then that money is divvied out again in supposedly a fair way. Now, the biggest part of the budget in Europe was the agricultural budget. And when the money got divvied out then, because there isn't that many farms, in England, and England isn't a farming nation, it's an industrial nation, it found that it was losing out. And they put pressure on Europe to sort it out, which Europe eventually did. Then there were other issues to do, I suppose, on the margin, to do with things like chocolate. In Europe, making chocolate with milk is not seen as the right way to make chocolate. So as far as the Europeans were concerned, the chocolate that was coming from England wasn't really chocolate. It was just saccharin and other things like that. So there were the French and some other countries objected and put tariffs in the way of English chocolate coming in, and of course the English rebelled against that. And
they're all growing their own chocolate beans, of course, right? It's so funny that right. I mean, where are the beans coming from in the first place?
That's right, yeah. And so you got to the point where in the referendum around Brexit, you got similar types of ridiculous ideas, being scattered, because by the time that Brexit came into being, the media generally was in favour of withdrawal. There was in England the two sides. One was to join, and one was to remain and to leave. They were the two campaigns that were known. That's what they were known as. The main media was all on the leave side, and they had a field day just with fake news. Essentially. There were terrifying people because, as you know, Turkey, would love to become a member of the European Union. So that was one of the fears that was sparked up, that eventually Turkey is going to join and England is going to be flooded with all these Turks.
Which is code for Muslim, I assume.
Yeah. And
we're talking about a very ancient hostility. There's obviously quite a history between England and the Crusades going and invading. This goes back hundreds of years.
Of course, it's the chickens coming home to roost story, in Britain's, because most of the non-British, and most of the non-British, we're talking about non-English, are people from the former colonies, who, because they were part of the colonies, had a right to come there. The English had to deal with that for 50 years of accepting people from Bangladesh and Pakistan and India. But what they could say, they all had British passports. They all spoke the English, but
Definitely
now
the chicken's coming home. Yeah, that rings true.
So then,
Sean, is your family originally from Ireland? You grew up there, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm from Dublin.
From Dublin. How many generations back in Dublin?
The course I'm going to start a new course on the history of Ireland, going back to the very beginning, to ancient Ireland, and my starting point in that course is 1.7 billion years ago. Now, granted, 1.7 billion years ago there wasn't any people around, but literally, I'm the Murphys, and the Murphys were an original a Gaelic clan.
So as long as you have any documentation, you are to the core Irish from Dublin and the surrounding area.
Yeah, there would have been people. There was likely, people in Ireland before the last ice age. The last ice age probably began around 100,000 years ago. It ended about 12,000 years ago. So we have some evidence, of people from about 12,000 years ago. The Celts, which we call ourselves, arrived in Ireland probably at this stage about 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. We don't know for sure. As far as we understand it, the Murphys would be part of the Celtic people who came to Ireland. There's a famous book that was written in the 12th century called the Book of Invasions, and that detailed the arrival of the different groups. And the Celts were the last of the groups to come to Ireland. They were the last ones to gain control of Ireland from the people who had been there previously.
We've obviously had many waves. I'm going to fast forward considerably. We've had many waves of Celts and Irish people who've come to Massachusetts. I'm curious your personal story. How did you arrive here in Massachusetts?
Well, I came here to marry a woman who was my next door neighbor in Ireland when I was growing up. And we got separated for about 30 years. And eventually we reunited, and I decided to come here. It made more sense, given family setups and the rest, for me to come than for her to come back to Ireland.
So a love story. That's fabulous. I love how that's the root. Welcome. It's so good to have you here. There's obviously a lot to unpack in this many, many centuries of relationships, and it's been turbulent now. I hope everyone's impressed with the depth of your knowledge and personal commitment to this story. And I'm really looking forward to having you come and speak with us. I say come join us online and speak with us about this when we have this program. So, Sean, thank you so much. I'm very grateful.
I'm delighted to be able to share, because not only is there a narrative, not only is there a history, but there's all sorts of lessons, in terms of, us as human beings, how we behave, how we do, and how we answer the question of when and where and how are we ever going to get to the stage where we can all live together in a meaningful way, accept one another, and do the right thing.
Indeed. And those questions today about how we can live with each other seem very personal. They are written on a large stage across a lot of history, but they mean so much of us. They just seem so much more acute today. So I appreciate you helping us bring an angle to consider so much history as we figure out how to move forward. Thank you.
Yeah. It's those existential questions, have been raised so many times in Irish history.
Well, we have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
So thank you. I really am grateful, and I'm looking forward to the program. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
That was my conversation with Sean Murphy. I hope you will join us for the presentation of Brexit and the implications for Ireland that will be happening online with the Thomas Crane Public Library, both via Zoom, where you can join us and participate with chat features at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, May 5th. It will also be happening on YouTube, live streamed at the same time on Tuesday, May 5th at 7 o'clock. I hope you'll join us. On Thursday, May 21st, we're starting the first in a series of 3 online cooking demonstration classes with Colin McCullough. Every week for 3 weeks, we'll meet live on Zoom and live stream into YouTube starting at 7 o'clock. The first demonstration will be all about smoothies that taste like desserts. Then, on May 28th, Colin will show us how to create some healthy and amazing sauces, which is the secret to using everything in the back of our cupboards that we can't figure out what to do with. The last in this series with Colin is sure to be popular. It's all about healthy and decadent desserts. I recently spoke with Colin from our respective kitchens, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. I'm joined today by Colin McCullough, who is going to be doing a series of 3 cooking demonstrations for the Thomas Crane Public Library, happening on 3 subsequent Thursdays, starting on May 21st. We're going to be talking about smoothies on the 21st, sauces and dressings on the 28th, and delicious and healthy desserts on June 4th. I hope you enjoy our conversation from his and my kitchens to you wherever you are. It's a pleasure to bring Colin. He's an old friend of mine, and I think you're going to have a wonderful time hearing him talk about this program, and I hope you'll join us for the cooking demonstrations. Colin, thanks so much for taking some time to talk to me today. I really appreciate it. How you doing?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah.
Good. I'm really excited to be able to bring you in your kitchen to connect with the people in Quincy. I know that you were telling me that you don't have a huge industrial kitchen, but I think that's totally all right. You're in your kitchen right now. So
I am. Yeah, it's kind of fun.
That's awesome. And you've been doing a lot of cooking these days? I
have, yeah. I teach a lot of cooking classes at libraries, and it's funny because, I always bring my blender and my food processor, and I bring my kitchen to wherever I'm going to be teaching for for an hour or two. But these days we're at home, so you get to come to my kitchen.
I'm so happy to be in your kitchen, and you're actually in a new kitchen. You just moved into this kitchen a few weeks ago, so
I did.
It's super exciting. I'm so happy for you. That's great.
Thank you.
So we're going to be doing 3 classes together that people can come and enjoy. We're going to talk about sauces and dressings. We're going to talk about smoothies. I think we're going to be talking about smoothies first, then sauces and dressings, and then we're going to finish with desserts, which is always exciting. How did you get interested in and teaching people how to cook?
Well, I've been vegan for about 25 years, so it's one thing for me to try and eat healthy, but, I have 2 boys who are now, believe it or not, 17 and 20. And, I
remember them when they were so little. It's incredible.
Trying to get them to eat healthy food, it's been more of a challenge. So anytime that I've been able to, make recipes where, I use a lot of healthy whole food ingredients and they ask for seconds and I say, yes. Okay. So save those recipes. So actually, I started teaching classes and there was a lot of, I got a lot of great reception from that. A lot of people had a lot of questions. I ended up writing a cookbook, the Healthy Vegan Cookbook, because of all of the classes that I've been teaching at libraries. And, I'll usually teach 3 or 4 recipes per class, whereas, the book has got everything in it already. But these classes that we're going to be doing through the library, we're going to be doing the breakfast smoothies that taste like dessert. So, I usually like to have smoothies for breakfast in the morning. Great way to start out with a bunch of fruit. I put in some nuts, some seeds, some different things in there. But, I've always tried to write my smoothie recipes specifically to try and taste like a dessert. So like the Black Forest smoothie is one that I have a lot, chocolate and cherry. Great combination.
Delicious.
It is delicious, and it's also super healthy. It doesn't sound like it, but it's super healthy. So, we'll be doing that as one of them. We're going to be doing a class on sauces. And so, this is a great class to do, at this time where, we're kind of rummaging through our pantries and, trying to find, we find the can of beans that's been in there for a year or two and, never really knew what to do with that. Doesn't matter. We make some really good sauces. You can put it over all that stuff. And, the main thing you're going to be tasting is the sauce. So, you dig out all the healthy stuff, throw it in there, put a really good sauce on it. That's how I get my kids to eat a lot of healthy food, is having a really good sauce. So we'll do that.
It's all about the sauce. Yeah. You can even take some ingredients that are a little bit past their sell-by date, put them a good sauce, and people are none the wiser. It's definitely a good chef's trick there. Yeah.
Yep. And then we'll be doing a healthy desserts
class. This is one of the more popular classes that I do teaching at libraries, using whole food, healthy ingredients, but, trying to make them. I don't really do, like the alternative healthy version of like Toll House cookies, because
We're not going to just do you in carob everything. Tell me we're not. It's not carob based. Good.
No.
I remember I grew up with people who tried to tell me carob was the same as chocolate, and I like carob, but it is not the same as chocolate.
Oh no. Carob is banned from my kitchen. So
banned. Oh, okay.
No, so we'll do some different healthy whole food ingredients. You use your food processor. I always tell people, in my classes, I am a very lazy cook. So if I can get, the number of ingredients together, put it in the blender, let the blender do the work. Let the food processor do the work. So that's what we'll be going over.
Well, I am super excited. I think this is going to be stuff that whether, those of us who are vegan will certainly appreciate. But one of the great things about cooking this kind of food, besides the fact that it's healthy, is that it's something that you can share with all the members of your family. And when we can share with other people, it's something that everybody can enjoy.
Oh, sure.
So yeah. I think that you certainly don't have to be vegan to appreciate and enjoy this food, because it's delicious food.
No, actually, most of the library classes that I teach, most people are not vegan or vegetarian. They just want some healthy recipes for their families. So, if that's what I can do to contribute, then that's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you said that you became vegan 25 years ago. Is that really when you started cooking, or when did you start developing your love of cooking?
My mom won't appreciate this, but she's probably not going to see this, so I'll tell you. When I was in high school, then, when my parents were working, and I'd come home from school, and always with quite an appetite. So I kind of started to learn how to cook that way, just because I got home and I wanted to make lots of food. And
something other than a bowl of cereal, huh? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, I started learning more cooking techniques that way. And, my mom really didn't appreciate it, because, sometimes what was for dinner that night, I would come home and make it and eat it all myself. And so,
oh dear,
the cause of great grief. But once I became vegetarian, and then I became vegan shortly afterwards, then, 25 years ago, there weren't the convenience foods. The restaurants didn't have, vegan options. So, I realized
by necessity.
Yeah, if I was, and I, definitely 25 years ago did not have any kind of budget fit for eating out if I could have. So,
right. Yeah.
I really needed to learn how to do it on my own, and, kind of developed a specific kind of way of eating, not just vegan, but I typically don't really use much oil. I don't use any sugar. I use very little salt. So, taking those things away, but still making it really rich and sweet and taste, really great, then that's been a challenge to, be able to modify recipes that I'm used to making and still, keep it really healthy. So.
Yeah. Well, I've tasted your food before, and it's awesome. So I'm really excited to be able to share this with a bunch of folks. Are there any ingredients that you're having a hard time finding these days? I know that we've been trying to go to the store. I had a friend who was able to find a flour at Target earlier this week, and he's been doing a lot of baking. But I was in the store the other day, and the entire flour section, there was just nothing there. So
right.
Are you finding everything you were looking for? Is there stuff that is a little trickier?
For the things that we're going to be doing, I haven't had any trouble, finding those things.
Yeah.
Also, in the age of Amazon and eBay and being able to order the stuff online, one thing people ask me a lot is, in the list of ingredients, do you use a lot of specialty stuff? And, in all the classes that I teach, I always say, look, I might go to Whole Foods every once in a while to get, specialty ingredients, or on Amazon, on eBay. So easy to just order it online. You can get specialty stuff. But for the most part, most of the ingredients that I use, you would just be able to find at a regular supermarket. And then if there are any specialty ingredients, then, I always stop and talk about where you can get it. Whole Foods is, I don't live too far away from a Whole Foods, so it's easy enough for me to go get it. But, really Amazon, eBay, you can easily order it online. Just comes right to your door.
Yeah, those online options certainly are a lifesaver. We're also blessed in Quincy. We have a couple of awesome Asian grocery stores, which I found personally have just really opened up the possibilities. So I think when we can get out and about and it's safe to do so, there's some great resources out there. So
Absolutely.
one of the last things I'd love to touch on here with you is to talk about your philosophy around cooking. Do you think that when people watch your show and they try to do these recipes at home, they have to do everything exactly like you're doing them, and they have to have the exact ingredients that you did? Or what do you think about interpretation?
So in the cookbook, the recipes that I developed, I really specifically made them to be as modifiable as possible. So, there are a number of people that come to my classes who they are allergic to nuts. They can't have that. Or, I always get a lot of questions about people saying, I'm trying to stay away from this. I don't want to have that. I'm allergic to that. So, in the cookbook, definitely, and the recipes that we'll be doing in the classes, there's actually not that much that you can't substitute if you wanted to,
Just keep the spam out of the smoothies. I think that's always a bad idea.
Spam smoothies, also kale smoothies.
You don't put kale in smoothies? We've actually had kale and spinach in the. You're not a kale fan, though, so.
Well, I love kale, but like steamed in a bowl, dinner or something like that, I'll have kale, all night. It's fine, but in a smoothie, it just tastes like liquid lawn to me. So.
Well. So noted. I've actually had a couple recently. I think it was more spinach that we were doing than kale in the smoothies. But
yeah. Spinach sits in the background and plays nice with everything else a lot better than kale. Kale's a little bit stronger, but I have a lot of friends who love the kale smoothies. So not trying to diss those, but it just to my taste, it's kind of strong.
Well, Colin, I'm super excited to have these classes, to get to spend a few evenings. So we're going to be doing these for 3 weeks. And I think everybody's going to have a great time to come join us and to be able to share your kitchen. So thanks for doing this with us. I really appreciate it, Colin.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, happy to. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So that was my conversation with Colin. I hope you will join us for the Cooking with Colin classes. The cooking demonstrations happening on Thursday evening, starting at 7 o'clock on May 21st, 28th, and June 4th. We'll start at 7 o'clock. They will be on our Zoom channel. You can look on our calendar for a link, or you can just look for the Thomas Crane Library on YouTube, and we will be live streaming it there. You will also be able to see them on YouTube after the fact, as we will be recording these. But I encourage you to sign in live. That way you can ask questions and get personal interaction with Colin. He's a great guy, and I hope to see you for these programs. On Wednesday, May 27th, we are collaborating with the Quincy Historical Society to host a fascinating program about original research they have conducted about Quincy's experience in the pandemic of 1918. I recently spoke with Alexandra Elliott, a staff member of the Historical Society, to learn more about this program. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's such a delight to join virtually like this, and I'm really excited that we're going to be working together to do a program from all our places virtually to everybody in Quincy and beyond who want to tune in. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. We were just talking before we started recording about what a vital role the Quincy Historical Society is playing in the community right now. And so I want to make sure everybody knows that you and Ed are working away, and that these are historical times we're living through, and both working with us to help talk about what impact and how do we remember these times in the future, and what lessons can we learn from our history that we can apply to life today. And that's what we're going to be talking about. This is a really topical program that you're going to be talking about, where you have done a lot of research, and the Historical Society has done a lot of research into the effect of the last major pandemic that affected Quincy, which would be the pandemic that happened in 1918.
That is correct. Yeah.
Was that research done before you joined the Historical Society, or?
Nope. That was I was one of the co-leads on that particular project. It was a joint effort, really, between Ed and myself.
Mm-hmm.
He focused more on the biographical research, so actually finding out information about victims and as many of the individuals as that we could identify. And then I was more about researching the timeline, so going through the newspapers and such and kind of figuring out exactly, piecing together what the story actually was in Quincy.
Wow. So walk me through a little bit. I mean, this is obviously the subject of the program, but I just, as a little teaser for folks.
Sure.
So you collected, how did you go about this? What was, in like a quick nutshell that we'll obviously expand on later.
Right. So it's sort of the 5-second spiel, or a little bit longer, is that, this project started when we were actually working on an unrelated research project. It was while we were doing research for one of our publications, the Quincy Book of Days, which was a publication that came out the same year.
We hosted a program for that when it came out.
You did, yes, absolutely. And one of the entries in that, I think in October, is from a headline from the Patriot Ledger about how Quincy was allegedly one of the most severe cases, or had some of the most severe cases in Massachusetts, or the most severely hit in Massachusetts, which is a very alarming headline to read. So we decided to follow up on that, check if that's actually, or if that was actually true, and kind of try and figure out if there was anything worth looking into there. And as it turns out, it absolutely was. We weren't really able to determine whether or not Quincy was the worst affected in Massachusetts, but we were certainly able to determine that there was a very unique story to what actually happened in Quincy during that pandemic. The crux of it is that the city at one point was so overwhelmed and just was not sure what to do about this, that they actually handed over control of the pandemic and of the entire city, essentially, to the Navy, which had a vested interest in Quincy at that point because of the shipyard and because it's 1918. We're right in the middle of America's involvement in World War I. And so, of course, the Navy wants to protect, their industrial interests, but also, wants to keep that strong. So
protect their labor force, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yes. Which they had a very large one at that time. Yeah. So they stepped in and actually took over management of the pandemic in Quincy, and that meant running the city essentially for a matter of a few weeks.
Wow. What a fascinating story.
Yeah. And that, as far as we can tell, that did not happen anywhere else in the United States. Or at least we haven't been able to find any other cases like that.
Now, I know that when you presented this story before, there was a little concern because we're actually talking about real people who lived in Quincy. We have names. You've developed a map that shows where these people we believe died, and we have names attached to these locations. Yep. But as we were talking about this before, this all happened over 100 years ago.
Yes.
But tell me a little bit about that, and let's help make sure that people are comfortable that we're not sharing family secrets here.
Right. Yes. So one of the big pieces of the project that when we were doing the research that we decided that we wanted to do was create a spot map, an epidemiological spot map of all of the victims that we could identify. Granted, we were, for the technical aspects, we were focusing just on the peak of the pandemic. So there's 3 phases of the pandemic, 3 waves essentially, and the second wave is the one that we focused on because that was the most, struggling for the word there, that was
the most impactful or the most
yes, that was yes, that was the most impactful. That was certainly the worst part of the pandemic, at least as far as Quincy was concerned. So we focused on that one in terms of the scope of our project. And so in making this map, we used a combination of city directories, old city records, as well as death certificates to be able to identify as many of the victims as we possibly could. Because in the official counts that we saw, it was actually underrepresented. At first, influenza was not actually even a reportable disease. So Quincy was nobody in Massachusetts at all, but also in Quincy, was even reporting how many cases there were at all.
Everybody just died of consumption once upon a time. Right?
Thereabouts, yes. But because of this, you have records of individuals dying of things that are not influenza. It's either pneumonia or something along those lines that happened to be a byproduct of the influenza. So we had to go through and tease all that out. But in that process, we made that spot map, and we were actually able to trace the spread through Quincy and see the areas that were more heavily affected. We did have a little bit of confusion after the rollout of that map, in which people were a little bit shocked at, like, oh no, are you sharing people's personal information? And unfortunately, these are people who died 100 years ago, but there is certainly no current personal information about anybody currently living.
I suspect most of the people that knew these people personally are also dead, since it's been
for
so
the most
long.
part. We would assume so, yes.
Yeah. But people may see some family members in this,
Yes,
because this definitely was our community.
we have actually had members of the Historical Society looking at it and messaging us and saying, this is so interesting. I found out about a family member I didn't know I had, because no one in my family ever mentioned them before, who died during the pandemic. And so there's been some really interesting stories about, discovery within one's family tree because of this.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds like a very fascinating story, and I'm so glad that you've done this research and are able to share it with us. I know this is a program that some people may have caught before, as we were just alluding to, but it's going to be in a new fashion. So probably even the people who saw it before, we're all seeing things with a different light as we're living through a different pandemic today.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, one of our focuses when we were doing this the first time, this was in January of 2019, was thinking about how crazy was this. This was just, I could never imagine living in a world where, theaters and schools are shut down and you're kind of under quarantine, and well, here we are.
Yes, we never thought we were going to live through this. It always felt so long ago. And so in some ways, I think we can take heart that we have lived through some pretty horrific pandemics before. Yes,
this is something that has actually been rather comforting to me, is to think that, as a society, we have gotten through these types of events before. Very sadly, there is a tragic loss of life, but we, as a community, we pull together and we make it through.
And that's what we're going to do now as well. But
absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining me, Alexandra. I'm really looking forward to this program.
Thank you very much. We're looking forward to it too.
I hope you enjoyed these conversations and learning more about what's going on at your library. We are working hard to bring you what you need in these challenging times, and I hope you'll join us to appreciate all of our efforts. Please continue to stay safe and healthy. I look forward to seeing you again soon.